Okay, here we are again with another installment of the Reconstruction Jim Crow unit, except now, obviously, we're moving on to the Jim Crow unit itself. The Jim Crow unit being the challenges for African Americans after Reconstruction. So let's go ahead and look at this introduction. We'll talk about who Jim Crow was. Okay. So you'll see here that one of the things that this unit is called, besides the Jim Crow era, is early challenges for African Americans. Early as in early in the time period after the Civil War and Reconstruction. Now, what are some of the basics about this unit? Well, you see them right in front of you, and you can pause it and look at these in more detail. I'm not going to read them to you, but basically racial segregation, splitting apart based on race. And then there were Jim Crow laws. And it was more than just laws, it was also customary practices, as in things that people did in a certain region. Like there might not be a law that said that an African American man had to step off the sidewalk if a white woman was coming towards him, but that would be expected practice and there'd be problems if he didn't do it. Those are the Jim Crow type of laws and customs that were followed. And you're going to be learning basically in a big old piece of this module unit, not today but later, about Plessy versus Ferguson, a Supreme Court case in 1896 that actually said separate but equal was okay by the Constitution of the United States. And then you're also going to learn about two famous individuals, Booker T. Washington and W.E.B. Du Bois, two famous African Americans, leaders in the African American community that had different ideas about how African Americans should respond to this kind of racial treatment. So let's move on in our introduction. Yes, it was indeed all about race. All about race. You can see there, we're talking about a desire by whites to keep control. Now, during the days of slavery, controls kept over African Americans being held as slaves by keeping them close and making them work and do that kind of stuff. Now the effort was to control them by keeping them further away. Segregation. And every once in a while, violence would be mixed in, extreme violence. In fact, violence, it's so brutal that we oftentimes don't even like to think or talk about it. So, what is racial segregation? What you should do right now is pause this video and with the note guide that you're using, actually write down what are your ideas. Because remember, we'll be looking at these note sheets that you're filling out. The question, what does it look like on the web? Let's real quick go look. Loaded this up. Okay, so here I did a Google image search because images teach us a lot. And you might see the number here, 27 million hits on simply Jim Crow. Now we could search on Jim Crow cartoons, we could search on Jim Crow laws, but what you see in front of you is when they're trying to get rid of it later on, Jim Crow must go. You also see examples of some of the Jim Crow laws, the separation based on race. You see the white water fountain and the African American water fountain. You see a waiting room for a bus for African Americans. You see help wanted, white only. You see a segregated movie theater. Now we could keep going on and on and on, but the idea is Jim Crow was a widely spread thing. So let's go back to our show. Again, introduction. Was it just for African Americans? So don't just dismiss it saying this isn't about my people. It was about different groups of people. So you see here, it was discrimination in certain areas of the country against Spanish or Latino people, which of course is just as bad as discrimination against African Americans. But now we're going to go to look at exactly where it was. Was it only in the South? I've had people tell me that before. Or was it more widespread than that? So look at it. As you see here, this is a learning tool. And you see the map of the United States, you see the continental United States, you see the non-contiguous region, Alaska and Hawaii there. So let's go and do a search with our selection tool. And what we're going to do is we're going to search on total Jim Crow laws. And we're going to say total Jim Crow laws greater than 1. Now what that's going to tell us is any state that had at least one Jim Crow law. So let's look. And look at that. Every state except for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 states. Every state had at least one Jim Crow law. Now stop and think about this logically. That helps you understand how it wasn't just aimed at African Americans, because there are regions where there weren't many, if any, African Americans living. So who would have been discriminated against in those areas? Possibly sometimes Latino Americans, possibly sometimes Indian Americans, but just different groups of people like that discriminated against by laws that focused on race. And let's go and do a little bit better so you can see where were most of the Jim Crow laws. So we do selection by attributes again, and we change the 1 to a 5. So that will tell us any state that had more than 5 Jim Crow laws. And so there you go. We still have Idaho and Wyoming and California and Arizona, but now most of it is indeed what was considered the South. Indeed, most of these were Confederate states during the Civil War. So yes, it was indeed focused mostly on African Americans, but it was more widespread. So please pay attention to the rest of the videos and learn from this.